Hi, everyone. Jennifer Janachek here with Sound Wisdom. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to be speaking with author Jason Hewlett, whose book, The Promise to the One, comes out on Tuesday, actually. So there's still time to pre-order it, and definitely pick up a copy. If you haven't already, order a copy. Jason is a world-class entertainer and speaker who has some really helpful advice for identifying what your strengths are and gaining clarity on them and using those strengths to commit to an identity that you can use to better your own life and better the lives of others. So we're thankful to have Jason here today, especially to talk about some things related to gaining clarity during chaotic times, because I know with the pandemic and then with huge storms in the Midwest, people are unsettled, they feel unmoored, and Jason's the perfect person to help us gain some clarity. So thanks, Jason, for being with us.
That was an incredible introduction, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. You're kind. So, promises, they're not something that we might, think about anymore in the modern world, because we're often told to be self-focused, right? To be successful, you have to be, focused entirely on yourself. And you write that promise breaking is one of the most significant maladies of the modern world. So I thought maybe you could share a little bit about why that's not, why keeping promises is really crucial to your own success and, your own happiness and joy in life.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with that part. It's about joy and happiness. And really, it's about centering ourselves in a space of knowing that we are living our true character, our true purpose. And so a lot of us, probably have had promises broken to us throughout our lives. And the book is called The Promise to the One. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, what is the one? Who is the one? And I say, it's not your boss. It's not your spouse. It's really nobody but yourself. We make promises all the time to our companies that we work for, or to our family, or to the people we work with, and even in our community. But what about the promise to ourselves? And so it really comes down to a space of saying, am I happy with who I am? And how can I really identify a little bit more my own purpose and my own promise to the world? And when we're not keeping that, we know it intrinsically within us. I believe that. I believe that we know if we're going down a path that we're supposed to and meant to. And we also know if we're breaking a promise to ourselves and just saying, gosh, nothing is working for me. Nothing feels harmonious. Mm-hmm. And our integrity is our harmony. And so that's what this book is really about.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you what might be some signs or cues that we've deviated from, our promise to ourselves. And so having a sense of that cognitive dissonance, are there any other signs that you can think of that might be signals, I'm breaking major promises to myself?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see throughout our day, whether we watch somebody else breaking a promise to us, if it's a company that said that they would do something for us as far as getting a higher promotion. If we work hard enough, they'll give us the next opportunity. Or if it's, even with the things that we do every single day. I mean, think about the promises that we maybe make to ourselves when we wake up each day. Think about your morning routine, for example, mm-hmm. Jennifer. I don't know what yours is like. I know I wake up, I brush my teeth, and then am I making decisions at that point that I'm either going to work out, mm-hmm. or I'm going to meditate, or am I going to talk to my family, or am I going to just run out the door and go do my jog? There's a lot going on. And so if we can make a promise even the night before and say, my true commitment tomorrow is I'm going to wake up, brush my teeth, run out the door, keep a promise of health to myself, and then I'm going to get right into work through the day. And my promise continues to uplift me throughout the day. My promise is that I want to live a healthy life. Mm-hmm. Or my promise is that I'm going to spread joy wherever I go, even if I'm in the middle of a Midwestern tornado type storm, whatever the heck just happened, right? How crazy and sad. But even with 2020, the pandemic, the quarantine, can I still be joyful?
Mm-hmm.
That's my promise, is to still spread joy, even if I'm not so happy, because that spreading of joy brings me to my promise.
Absolutely. So even in moments of extreme difficulty, it's even more important to keep that promise to ourselves. And I would love to think more about how promise keeping can provide a great sense of stability. You already talked about a good example, how it just snowballs. If we start keeping promises to ourselves at the beginning of the day, I know personally, if I work out in the morning, if I keep that commitment to myself, the rest of my day is measurably better than if I hadn't. And then I think about it all day. I should have done this. I should have done that. And, I never do it because I'm so focused on the fact that I didn't. But then if you just took that moment to do it, you could still salvage the rest of your day. So how is keeping a promise to ourselves, keeping promises that we set for ourselves, crucial for providing stability, especially during chaotic times?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we could say that we're just going to set a bunch of goals throughout the day to make it a better day. And that's an important thing, I think. I'm in business for myself and I'm a one-man team here, essentially. I have people that help me here and there, but I'm really running the ship. And so I'm setting goals each day for sales and enough social media posts and all of those types of things. But it really comes down to the question of why set a goal when we can make a promise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I miss some of those goals throughout the day, that's okay. But there's got to be an overarching promise that I'm keeping to myself every single day. And even at this time where people are very frustrated with their day and they're thinking, man, I don't know if we're even going to get through this. Well, what is your promise to your family? What is your promise to your company that you work for? What is your promise regardless of how bad everything gets? And that's where in chapter 2, we talk about identify, clarify, magnify.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ICM process. And I know when people have gone through this with me, it's about discovering their signature moves, that which makes them great, their gifts, their talents. Jennifer, when the pandemic hit, every single gig I had as a speaker, entertainer for large corporate events was gone. Now, that's frustrating, yeah, but what's my promise? My promise is not just to show up for them 100% present. My promise is to be 100% even on a virtual Zoom call or wherever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I switched immediately as quickly as I could and said, I got to keep a promise to anyone that's still interested.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a driving force to say, I'm driving my stake into the ground and saying, I'm going virtual. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I think that's where saying to ourselves, I have a promise to not stop even when everything seems to be a disaster around me. I can continue to get to a foundational space of knowing that I can keep a promise no matter what's happening in my life.
Absolutely. And I love how you distinguish between goals and promises, because goals, they're very helpful for driving success. But what you're talking about, a promise, is much deeper. It's much more foundational. And so goals, then we can build off of our promise, right? And those may be shifted or moved around a little bit, but the promise doesn't change. It's fixed. And that's what provides us that stability. We can always go back to it and, remind ourselves, this is my commitment. So yeah, great example.
Said. Yeah, well said. And the goal thing, I'm not saying don't set goals. Goals are where it's at. I've lived my life as a goal setter and a goal accomplisher. But I know if I miss a goal, it's not that big of a deal. I just go, I didn't accomplish that goal. Oh, well. But if I make a promise and I break it, I have a problem. That's why I like that example of, that no man has ever stood across from a woman to get married and he says, I set a goal to be faithful. It almost sounds ridiculous, right?
Right.
I mean, it's like, I promise I will love you forever, right? And so there's a difference in the language. I don't think it's just semantics. It is a goal, or a promise is like a sacred goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a covenant. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thinking more about, the things people are having to do right now, this is the perfect opportunity for people to dig down and figure out what those promises are that they have made, that they should be making to themselves to find that fulfillment. What advice would you give to people who feel, like they're not getting their value right now? How can they create more value in their lives through the method that you offer: identify, clarify, magnify?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say, I mean, if you've identified your gifts already, maybe go back through the process. And what I tell people is, don't just try to identify one or two signature moves that you have. And if your audience is like, what is a signature move? A signature move is simply that which makes you stand out in this world. And so it's what makes you unique. What do you bring to the table in your company, in your community, with your family? And so maybe go back through this process and write down some of your gifts and traits, your talents and skills. I know that when I went back through this in March, because obviously I was getting ready for the big book launch of The Promise of the One, and I thought, I'm going to go through this again as we made some new workbooks and worksheets. And I found some new traits and gifts that I didn't even consider the time before when I had done it. For example, I added some new ones like, I am a problem solver. Mm-hmm. I can do tech. Mm-hmm. Like I can learn a lot of things. I became an even better learner during this 2020 COVID thing than ever before. I was watching YouTube tutorials on how to make a Zoom call really cool, or StreamYard, or wherever you're at. And so I identified those things, then I clarified them. And when you clarify it, you are asking other people to help you discover what it is that makes you unique. So they're going to give you new words. So if I say to myself, I'm a learner, other people have actually said to me, you're not just a learner, you're a sponge. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that word better. I'm like, yeah, I am a sponge. So I'm going to take in everything that I'm learning. And, when it comes to really magnifying those promises, now I'm saying to myself, I know I can get through this. I know I can make it happen. And gosh, I mean, if your listeners and people that are watching this are going, I can't identify that which makes me unique. Well, take a minute and write it down. Write down your gifts, as simple as they may be, that you're maybe an artist, you're a writer, you're a problem solver, you're a connector, you're a people person that can't be with people right now. So how can you still make that work and that connection, Mm-hmm. And I love to ask people, how present are you? Are you 100% present in your conversations with the person you're with? Are you 100% present with your family when you have that time with them? Mm-hmm. All of that can be the great gift of what we're going through during the quarantine and the pandemic, is to say, I'm going to be fully present with them. And that becomes a greater gift to ourselves. And we say, gosh, I kept the promise today. I was fully present. What a great day.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And those YouTube videos, they really do come in handy. You're right. I discovered that I can cut hair if you're okay with a little bit of a bald patch on the side. That's my husband. But no, I love what you said about, discovering your signature moves and using other people's thoughts to help you refine, the gifts that you have and those that you might not be aware of. That's such a helpful process. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about how that discovering those signature moves almost calls us to leadership. This book has a lot of great insight for leaders, for developing leadership training, but it's not specifically geared toward, or exclusively geared toward that, I should say. But there is that draw there for anybody when they discover that. So maybe you could say a little bit about how that discovery process brings you to service and mentoring.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to being a leader, I know a lot of us are reluctant to even take on that title and say, I'm a leader. Well, we don't want that perhaps. Some people strive for that, and that's cool. But I know for me, I'm a very reluctant leader until I realize that, yes, the words that I say matter. The things that I do on the stage are a leadership role. And the things that I post online, that can be leadership. I know that even watching, think about what's going on online. People are fighting and opinions are crazy. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh man, what is my leadership role in that, Jennifer? I know for me, my leadership is I'm going to spread joy. regardless of what I'm seeing from people that I don't agree with, I don't want to be a part of. I'm just going to spread joy. And that way I can be a leader. And so when it comes to understanding your purpose, realizing your promise, then you can share it with the world. And that is leadership, knowing who we are, knowing what direction we're going. And that inspires other people to say, gosh, if Jennifer's sharing her gifts that way, if she's cutting hair, even if there's a little bald spot on the side, I admire that she's willing to go for that. Really, the promise is just courage. That's all it is. Are you courageous enough to share your gifts that you maybe have hidden away in a drawer a long time ago when someone said, that's not something you should be or you're good at? The truth is, it's time to bring that out, share it with the world. The light you shine is the light you receive. And that's leadership.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect transition into my next question, which is about, thinking about how do we make those decisions that are particularly difficult when we know, that the choice is really between keeping our promise and, maybe not necessarily breaking it, but not quite. I guess breaking it a little bit. So I'm thinking of two examples that you discuss in your book. So you have the example of turning down, the career in Las Vegas, headlining, Strip, amazing opportunity that you walk away from. It's a really powerful story for those, read it in the book. And then, also deciding to go on tour and perform for the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, which I imagine would be an incredibly difficult decision, having a family especially. So, with those decisions, can you share a little bit about how you made that decision, even though, it was incredibly difficult and were able to keep your promise in those instances?
Yeah, those are big stories. And the Las Vegas one, a lot of people have been shocked to hear it, that a young person getting a Las Vegas opportunity would turn it away just to be able to keep a promise to self. But you might argue, well, you have a promise to share your voice, to get on stage no matter what, to sign the contract no matter what's being offered or what's going to change. And for me, that there was a certain level of saying, yes, this is a promise that I want to fulfill my dreams. I want to do this. But there's an even deeper promise that came down to character. And it comes down to this place of integrity where you say, what am I really about? What is my true promise to my legacy? Not just today, my entire life, what I'll be known for, what they'll say about me at my funeral. I even talk about that in the book too. And so when you really drive down deep into that place of saying, my promise to myself is to do it this way. I know this is the right way. And if I even give an inch and go for the other promise that might be, I'm going to provide for my family because this will be a better living. That's even breaking a promise. And so, yeah, when you make those decisions, it's got to be something very deep, very difficult. With Afghanistan and that tour with the troops, that was now 6 years ago. Amazing to think it was that long ago. But yeah, I'm flying around in Afghanistan and they're shooting at our helicopter. It was a very scary experience. But with 4 young children, my wife said, why are you doing this again?
Yeah.
And I said, well, we made a promise before we had kids that if the military ever called and they said, we need you to come and perform for us, that would be a promise that I needed to make and keep. And even when the kids came along, and as much as I wanted to be around for them, I thought, there's a lot of moms and dads over there serving that they don't get to maybe come home to their kids either. They're making a risk. So can I still make a risk? To me, it was a promise that was strong enough to keep, even if it meant threatening our life. And it did. It was scary, but we got out of there, and I'm grateful. And so when it comes to making those big decisions, it really comes down to just what is your core value? What are your foundational beliefs? And what are you willing to potentially walk away from or risk in order to keep a promise that builds your legacy?
Yeah. And I appreciate how you noted, that we can rationalize and identify the other promises, that we can say, we have these other promises, though, but getting back to our core foundational beliefs is a great, a strategy for ensuring that we are living out our promise on a daily basis, and with the big stuff, but the little stuff too. So, I want to talk a little bit about how we can keep the promise on a day-to-day basis. And I'm thinking especially because you're famous in part for this amazing viral post that you wrote about your wife, seeing her in Target and, seeing her through a stranger's eyes. If you guys haven't read this post, you have to go read it, especially if you're a woman, go read it. Well, I mean, if you're a guy too, go read it and then, apply that knowledge. So, but there are a lot of people who have been holed up with their significant others or spouses in this pandemic, and they're probably at each other a little bit. So what advice would you have for the little stuff, but especially with like marriage right now, to help people live out the promise that they kept, that they made to their partners? Since, that's something that you clearly are living out in your commitments.
I'd say, first of all, go on a lot of walks by yourself. I mean, really, as we're all holed up and we're all trying to navigate what this is about, a lot of the times when we turn inward and we start to say, this is me suffering and this is such a drag and I'm so bummed out about my life and my work and everything. It's until we start to look out of ourselves, when we start to serve each other. I know when I was starting to get a little bit perturbed, let's say, about my family's situation, and I was just getting agitated and antsy, it's because all I was thinking about was me. When I started to think about them, I thought, well, what would my wife like today? And I realized, I bet she'd like a foot massage. Like that would be a nice thing for her. I mean, and so I give her a foot massage. Now our relationship has improved. I'm not trying to like win any points. I'm just trying to serve. And then I'm looking at her making dinner and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go clean it up, So now it's just a matter of being able to see and open our eyes to all that's happening in our home, in this little microcosm of life that we have here. And we can say, how can I serve those people that I am with every day? How can I express love in a different way? And in the post in Target, that whole situation, that really came down to seeing the person you love with fresh eyes. I think the best way to do that, in my opinion, at least from what I've done, is through service, is through, taking an opportunity to listen and to just let them download upon you all that they're going through, and really seeing them as a person, not just somebody who's there all the time. And I know for me, being that present with my wife has allowed our relationship to flourish, even amidst income lost. Are the kids healthy? What are we going to do about the mask situation? Everything that's going on is nuts. But can I still see in them through service and through, through still giving gifts, whether it's writing a little note and sticking it on the pillow, even though you're going to see each other the same day, same time, it's important to still do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I mean, from our talk, I've gathered a really important concept that, this focus and commitment to ourselves, the promise to ourselves, it's an inward look, but it's fundamentally an outward look as well. And that's quite unique, right? Because we need to look inward to discover our strengths, but in looking inward, we're also looking outward to have other people share their perspectives on our journey. But also ultimately that focus on service is, positioned both ways. It's an inward glance and it's an outward glance as well. So I'll leave that with everybody as an important thing to, take away. Remember that to look at each other through fresh eyes, that's so important. And it's such a good reminder and something that we all need since we've been stuck with maybe the same views. So thank you so much, Jason. To everybody out there, his book, The Promise to the One, comes out on August 18th, next Tuesday.
I'm going to take
So
a selfie of that because that is so cool watching you hold that book up. Thank you.
yeah, I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get it into the frame. But yes, it's a wonderful book and incredibly powerful and moving, and so much really good concrete advice. The process and journaling activities that you can take yourself on, and now is the perfect opportunity to identify, clarify, and magnify. Right. So thanks again, Jason, for being with us.
Jennifer, you're awesome. Thank you for doing this. And you have an amazing way of making the words even more beautiful. So I
Thank
appreciate how you
you.
said this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.